COVID-19 outbreaks in China, they are taking a turn for the worse. Infections have jumped, prompting authorities there to order more rounds of mass testing in Shanghai and Tianjin. Millions of residents are also facing prolonged lockdowns as the government tries to stamp out new clusters. And the government has ramped up coronavirus screening as well across 9 districts in Shanghai. That's after the city reported more than a dozen new cases. The measures have triggered public outcry. Some residents in Shanghai noted that they are already subject to testing every weekend. And so more testing, well, it doesn't seem to be addressing the real problem. Our correspondent, Lo Min joins us live now from Shanghai for more on this story. Min, more mass testing for people in Shanghai. The city has yet to fully recover from that harsh 2-month lockdown that we saw in the spring. Where you are now, how are people reacting to this news?
Well, I'm standing in front of a 24-hour COVID testing booth. There are not a lot of people now because it's quite late, but, 2 more new rounds of mass testing is required for more than half the city over the next 3 days, and that is on top of the regular mass testing we have been doing every weekend since June when the lockdown was lifted. Definitely a sense of COVID fatigue here in Shanghai, which has experienced on and off lockdowns since March. Now, more compounds are under lockdown with little advance notice. One resident told me that the announcement for her came at 11 p.m. at night for a midnight lockdown. So there is a sense of fear and uncertainty, people not knowing when it will be the last day that they can move about freely. Just a couple of days ago, I was in a restaurant during the peak lunch hour, and I was surprised to find myself as the only diner there. Clearly, people are taking extra precautions to avoid crowded places during this period. And the mass testing now is also taking place at a time of extreme heat, temperatures up to 41 degrees. And if you haven't worn one of those hazmat suits, they are extremely stifling. It traps your body heat in. And at some of these booths that are not air conditioned, workers could be seen cooling themselves down with huge blocks of ice at their feet. It's uncomfortable for them and for the people queuing under the scorching heat.
Well, Min, these persistent outbreaks and the strict measures that we're seeing, they don't come without consequences. They're adding pressure on the country's economy as well. That contracted sharply in the second quarter. What are authorities doing, though, to ease the economic impact here?
That's right. We are looking at an economy characterized by high unemployment, sluggish consumption, and the last quarter GDP is one of the worst showings since the pandemic began. And the government is pouring in lots of money into infrastructure spending to pull up those GDP numbers. They are also introducing tax and fee cuts and rental subsidies. And just today, Beijing announced 100 million yuan worth of restaurant coupons. That is $15 million to save the struggling industry. If you drive around the streets of Shanghai, it's easy to spot those small shops that have closed down because they cannot sustain the low cash flow. Now, other measures include accommodation coupons, and Beijing recently reduced the tracking of our travel history through mid and high risk areas from 14 days to 7 days, which makes it slightly easier to maintain a green health code. But it's unclear if that's enough to boost travel and consumption, given the uncertainty over when you might be next caught in a wave of infection. The latest casualty being Guangxi province, which accounts for over 40% of the nationwide infection tally, and it's caused over 2,000 tourists to be stranded there under lockdowns. And recently, I tried to travel to a city 4 hours drive away from Shanghai, and I received no less than 7 calls from the local Pandemic Prevention Council, inquiring details of where I'm going, at what time I'm arriving and departing, which hotels I'm staying in, and my address in Shanghai. And for many people, this invasion of privacy is something that just can't be helped under zero COVID China.
Min, thank you for that update. Lo Min there reporting live from Shanghai.